Good evening. Welcome to Ask Mary Anything Within Reason. Um, I want to start with this. Maybe some of you remember these words that were affixed to the base of the Statue of Liberty about 125 years ago, actually, by Emma Lazarus. Her poem ends, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." That might be the first non Dr. Seuss poem I ever read when I was a kid. And I uh, I always thought those words meant something in America. And then in a very different context, Walt Whitman, America's greatest poet, wrote this. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. And that I think has been an expression of what America is supposed to be. We have always contained multitudes. We have always, in some way or another, been at tension with each other. We have very often embraced very different ideologies and visions for the future of this country. With the understanding and the hope that we would work it out and become, as our enslaving founders promised us, a more perfect union. So if I seem a little bit somber tonight, it's because I don't think that we have time to have those conversations anymore. The contradictions are too great. The space between the visions is unfathomable and unbridgeable, I think. So it comes down to this. We have to choose. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, my uncle is holding a hate rally in my home at Madison Square Garden, where in 1939 there was a pro-Hitler rally, which I have to say, Donald and his depraved, degraded thugs who are there with him are putting to shame. There's no hiding it anymore. They don't feel the need to hide it anymore. This was supposed to be a flex. This was supposed to be a power move. And I think one of the things they were trying to accomplish was to make us feel how many of us feel right now. It's heartbreaking watching so many in this country devolve, so many of people in this country be infected by the disease that Donald spreads. It is. It's hard not to. It's ridiculous to pretend otherwise. However, they want us to be broken. They want us to be weak. So let's not do that. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. I'm going to answer your questions now. Okay. Is anyone going to her DC rally? That's Christopher. Christopher, I assume you mean Kamala, because who else? Who else? That one should be legendary in size. Well, yeah, it better be. So if you can go, I suggest you go. I mean, I think this is something to keep in mind. Rally size doesn't matter, and just because our rallies are bigger now, it still doesn't mean they matter. It didn't matter when Donald was bragging about them. It doesn't matter now that Kamala is getting bigger crowds. However, we do need to show up and be energized. I just want to remind people of this. In 1939, 20,000 people showed up to the pro Hitler rally. Outside of the arena, 100,000 people protested. So, um, okay, take ourselves out of this for a minute. Is that a go-kart on the cover of my book? Yes, that is a go-kart. I went to camp on Cape Cod, and something that we did when either my mother or father visited is we went to the go-karts. So, it was fun. Okay. From Faye, what resistance should we establish? Like, you know what, Faye? I can't go there tonight. I can't. I'm sorry. Um, I am finding myself increasingly human these days. I don't really like it, to tell you the truth. It's a lot easier. Like one of the main benefits of having a complex post-traumatic stress disorder is very often I have no feelings, which definitely makes days like today easier. But every once in a while, the horrors break through and I feel it. So if you'll forgive me, as important as your question is, I cannot in this moment entertain it. But I will. I promise you I will. I'm going to flag it. I'm going to copy and paste it. We are going to talk about it. I just can't do it right now. Sorry. We're getting to this fascinating cornucopia of questions this evening. I think it's probably because a lot of you are feeling avoidant in the same way I am. You know, it's a lot to keep having to face, isn't it? From Susie, what's my favorite food to cook, eat? I don't cook. I mean I do, but it's ill advised. I cooked when my daughter was still home. But I'm a vegetarian and she's not, so we very often ended up not having the same meals. However, one thing we absolutely had in common, our favorite food is Italian food. So I could probably, again, also ill advised, but I could probably eat Italian food. Well, no, not it depends what you're eating though, right? Yeah, Italian food is my favorite cuisine of all the cuisines, and I hope someday I've spent lots of time in Italy, especially in Tuscany, especially in Florence, and hopefully I'll be able to do that again voluntarily. I would prefer not to have to live there in exile, but yeah, I'd love to go back there for a few months. Florence is my second favorite city on the planet. So, and the food, anybody who's been to the country where your favorite food has originated knows that it's infinitely better than, it is when you're not there. So, thank you. Barbara, what do I think our chances are? Well, I mean, I guess you could say that this is sort of adjacent to Faye's question, but, it allows me to still avoid answering Faye's question, because I actually it's hard because polls are ubiquitous. Corporate media wants the horse race, no matter how detrimental it is to our democracy, our elections, and our mental health. But um, all of that having been said, I feel hopeful. Of course, like today, I have my moments of existential dread, but I think also that it's always better to know. Like today, there is no denying what we're up against and what the other side stands for. So, I, in a weird way, it was very clarifying. I have a particular kind of clarity that I haven't had. I don't, and I didn't know it until I got it, right? So I guess by that what I mean is I feel it makes me feel hopeful's like the wrong word, man. Feel like people who can do the right thing are going to get the message, which redounds to our benefit. And there's just no denying anymore what's happening um on the other side. So it's clarifying in the sense that I think people who, whether they're on the fence or they weren't, and again, I think undecided voters aren't people who haven't decided between Kamala Harris and Donald. They're people who haven't decided yet whether they're or not they're going to bother to show up. Right. I think this will motivate people to show up, and I think it will also tell us a lot more than we probably ever wanted to know about some of our fellow Americans. So, okay. Just how many credits for graduation does the show count for? I mean, I guess if you went to Trump University, it would probably count for, you'd probably get a PhD. All right, I need to pick up the pace here. I apologize. I'm a little rattled. I'm a fairly unflappable person. So I guess we all have our limits. But I'm gonna have a sip of water, and then I'm gonna get my act together. Okay. Let's see. From Roxanne, Mary, is there anyone else in your family besides your brother who doesn't? I don't know what my brother does or not does. I don't know what my brother does or does not support. There are two people in my family, me and my daughter, and how she votes is entirely her business. But I can't think of anybody else. I mean, everybody else is very obviously publicly in Donald's camp, you know? So it's like the saddest, most pathetic family, I tell you. Okay, this is interesting because I've actually been writing about this. I'm actually making a video on a related topic from Sue. How is Donald's father treated by his parents? As many of you know, my grandfather was a sociopath, and there are reasons to have compassion for the very damaged child Donald was. Don't have any compassion for him anymore, obviously. But he had a very all five of them, including and especially my dad, but also Donald had very, very terrible childhoods. My grandfather, on the other hand, okay, so his parents were German immigrants. So my grandfather was an anchor baby. We know what that means. They lived in Richmond Hill, Queens, and my grandfather was born in 1905. So one day in, I think, 1917 or 1918, I'm not sure, his father came home from work because this is after, like, my great grandfather had originally gone to the Yukon and he had a brothel and he did all sorts of. He dodged the draft in Germany, which is why they wouldn't let him go back. He was a busy camper. Anyway, by the time he came back to Richmond Hill, they had 3 kids. They were fairly settled, fairly well off. And he came home from work one day and he said he didn't feel very well and he went to lie down and then he died because he was a victim of the 1917 pandemic. So my grandfather was 12 or 13. And I have to be completely honest with you. It did not have any impact on him whatsoever. Nobody ever spoke about my great grandfather. My great grandmother, on the other hand, whose name was Elizabeth, I think she was still alive when I was born. Um, but anyway, she lived a fairly long life, and she and my grandfather were very close. I mean, not in an emotional way because most people in my family don't have emotions. Um, not because of PTSD, because emotions weren't something that were really valued in my family. So she helped him start his business. My grandfather started building garages in Queens because cars were becoming a really big thing. So they needed houses, and that he sort of discovered his passion. And he was too young to start a business, so she did. It's called Elizabeth Trump and Sons. My uncle John didn't have any interest, so he went off and became a physicist and a professor, which is why Donald's so smart, remember? And my grandmother basically helped my grandfather get his start, and then as soon as everything took off and he was old enough to sign the checks and all that stuff, she took a back seat. It was a very patriarchal family, so he became the head of the family, and he was in charge of everything, and he controlled everything. So, I can't say, I mean, I do not know what his relationship was like with my great-grandfather, but, I don't there's nothing to indicate that it was abusive in any way, but I also know that my grandfather never expressed any kind of sadness or regret that my great-grandfather had died so young. But then again, sociopaths don't don't do that, do they? So, yeah, he acted like somebody who'd had a horrible, horrible, horrible life, but he did not. My grandfather had a pretty amazing, easy life. Okay, so L. Felsham. Second time asking the question. If Kamala does not get rid of the filibuster, gerrymandering the Electoral College, including the Supreme Court, how is anything going to change or get any better? Yeah, tell me about it. Listen, if it were up to me, and of course nothing is, I'm not really sure how, but I would make as many of those things happen on day one as humanly possible. I mean, I don't think a president can do anything about gerrymandering right away. Like that's a little bit more complicated. But the idea of not getting rid of the filibuster, not getting rid of the electoral college, and not expanding the Supreme Court by at least 4 seats and probably more like 8 is absolutely insane to me. It's why? I mean, there's no excuse at this point for defending any of those things. So I'm with you, and we'll have to see. We will have to see. You know what? This is what I want to say. One of the things to look forward to, there are so many, in having Kamala Harris in the White House and Tim Walz in the White House is that we can start holding Democrats to account now. Let's make democracy stronger, so that we don't have to worry about fascism anymore. And the only way we do that is by forcing Democrats to be better. Oops. From Bittersweet Dragon, what percentage of rally attendees do you think were promised money to be there? Probably all of them. I mean, remember, Elon Musk has been handing out $1,000,000 checks on a daily basis. Um, not all of them, obviously. Listen, let's not kid ourselves here. I'm not. I. This is New York. This is Manhattan. Uh, in 2016, Donald got 9.7% of the vote in the presidential election. It bumped up to 12% in 2020, which is just unnerving. He couldn't even get 25% of the vote in the borough he was born in and grew up in. So we hate him. I mean, it's very possible that they shipped a lot of people in from Staten Island. But you know, on the one hand, I would not be surprised if some people got paid. Uh But let's not kid ourselves. Tens of millions of people like what this guy is selling, and that's what we need to guard against. And also, honestly, it's the fact that a lot of people are there, yes, that's disturbing. What's infinitely more disturbing is what the speakers are saying and getting cheered on for having said. Mary Ann McCord. Mary, please call your family and tell them to get him off the public stage. Yes, I have a direct line. No, they they won't. First of all, they would one, I would never call them. Two, if I did, they would never answer the phone. And three, they don't care about Donald. If they did care about him, they would get him off the public stage. Their path to power is directly through him. And if he has to lose his mind in public and humiliate himself on a daily basis and barely get over the finish line because he's losing his mind, they do not care. They do not care. So, and again, I am probably the last person on the planet they would listen to. Let's see. A lot of questions about my grandpa. Was my grandfather no, my grandfather was not a KKK member. Apparently, he was arrested for being at a KKK rally. This is not a defense of him because I think if my grandfather had lived in Germany during World War II, he would have been a very good Nazi. But in a bureaucratic kind of way. And, he could have served his country during World War II, and he decided it was much more important for him to make money. So, and again, I'm not making excuses for him because he was horrible, horrible human being. Probably the worst person I've ever known, which is shocking, considering Donald exists. But my grandfather did not care about anything except his business and making money. So it's always it just doesn't seem like something he would find worthy to spend his time on. Like, he could be a perfectly anti-Semitic, racist scumbag without joining a club, you know what I mean? So, that's the only thing that he didn't have hobbies. Like, he's not gonna waste his time joining a racist organization when he was perfectly capable of denying housing to Black people. You know? Let's see. From Salome, did my grandpa suffer from yes, my grandfather had Alzheimer's. I actually made a video about this you guys should check out a couple of days ago, I think. About sort of the similarities I'm seeing between my grandfather in the last 10 to 15 years of his life and Donald now. Yes, he had Alzheimer's and it took a very different course. And again, I'm not saying Donald has Alzheimer's. I'm just saying there are similarities. I'm not a neurologist. I'm not a neuropsychologist. But yes, he forgot who almost everybody in the family was. He repeated himself constantly. He always forgot. He forgot everything, pretty much. So it was very bad, and unfortunately, it's genetic. So hopefully, it skips a couple of generations. Okay, if you were a furry, I don't know what that means. Sorry. Mercedes is going to be completely embarrassed by me. She's yelling at me in the private chat. What's a furry? I mean, just don't be mean. Just tell me. And maybe I know. Oh, God. All right. Well, all right. Sorry, I'm not judging at all. And this is not about furries. This is about cosplay. I think you guys are awesome. Look, I'm a total nerd. Total nerd. But we all have our different ways of expressing that. So I'm mostly a book / science fiction nerd, and my science fiction of choice is in terms of universes, not in terms of writers, is Star Trek. I've never been to a Star Trek convention, and although I was asked to speak at one and I had to do it remotely, which was kind of a drag, and I'd love to go to one, but, like, I'm not the kind of person who's gonna show up in costume. I'm not really sure why. I think like, I wish. I think it's because I'm a little bit inhibited. So, I love when people do give themselves the permission to do that because it's awesome. You have to remember, even though I subscribe to no religion, I grew up among wasps, the most repressed people on the planet. So, doing the best I can. Who knows? Maybe I'll get there. Maybe we'll meet at a furry convention someday. So I don't know, would my persona be aquatic? I don't think so. I mean, don't get me wrong. My favorite superhero when I was very, very young, and there was that cartoon, I can't remember what it was called, but all the superheroes were in the sorry, I got like embarrassing myself because I'm screwing up my superhero lore. But Aquaman from that cartoon was my favorite superhero because one, he could breathe underwater, which is something like I've had dreams about being able to do that my whole life. And he could talk to the underwater creatures. Like he can commune with the dolphins and the whale. I just like the coolest thing. But in terms of that, like I'm a cat person. So I'd probably go as a cat. Not that I could do cats justice, but I would do my damnedest. Let's see, where do we go? So thank you for that. And I learned something. Look at me. Even in the midst of the horrors, we can still learn. Thank you, Cobalt. Okay. From Mindy. I so appreciate you and thank you, Mindy. That's very kind. What's my sorry, I'm not laughing at the question. I'm laughing because I'm about to humiliate myself. It's like, have we not had enough of that? Um, like I didn't know what a furry was. It's like I'm feeling so out of touch with the universe right now. Okay, what's my favorite people watching place in New York City? I think because I grew up here and because I grew up among very repressed people and because I'm an introvert and because I spent half of my life just reading books. Um, I'm not a people watcher. I like don't notice things. It's very funny. Maybe funny is the wrong word. So I don't really have a people watching place because I don't people watch. But also lately, you'll probably understand why. I haven't been getting out much. Hopefully that will change soon. But anyway, if I were to people watch, it would be like I live near the Hudson River, so walking along the river, and maybe in lieu of people watching the sailboats, that's something I like to do. Central Park, also one of my favorite places. Honestly, the whole city. It is just the absolute best place on the planet. I am deeply horrified that Donald was allowed to defile it tonight, but we'll recover. We always have. We got rid of him. So, seriously though, anywhere. And the other great thing about New York is there are tons of like rooftop restaurants and bars and parks and stuff. So, um, yeah, it's it's amazing. So thank you for the question. Oh my God, Rick, that is extraordinarily generous of you. Wow. So let me kind of soak that in for a second. Seriously, deeply grateful. All right. So, what do I think about Arab American voters, especially Palestinian American voters, losing support for Kamala Harris and voting for a third party? Okay, I've said this before, and I don't mean this as a dodge at all. I am going to answer the question, but I don't know enough. I am not. I Let me put it this way. There are other people who could answer the question about what needs to happen, what should happen in the Middle East. I'm not one of those people. What I can say is I absolutely understand uh, how devastated people are, uh, Palestinian Americans are, that it doesn't seem like anybody is standing up for them to the degree that's necessary. I mean, we see it with our own eyes. We see what's happening in Gaza. So I mean, again, I'm not in those meetings. I don't know what happens behind closed doors, but I think, part of what is very difficult for me to understand is why people in power can't seem to separate Israel and the needs of Israel from Netanyahu and his corruption and his war crimes, and how we can't seem to exercise more leverage to make sure that innocent people stop getting slaughtered. I mean, I get it. I mean, I don't get it because I am not directly affected by it except as a human being. And I guess that's another thing. Like sometimes I just want, like, do we really need to be part of the group in order to feel the feelings, in order to have enough empathy? Do we really? Like, do we really need to be Puerto Rican or an immigrant to be horrified to the depths of our being by what we heard being said about Puerto Ricans and immigrants tonight? Like, do we need to be Palestinian? Do we need to be Arab? Do we need to be Muslim? Do we need to be Israeli? Do we need to be Jewish? Like, can we just acknowledge that there are horrible things going on and we need to do better? So I am not going to judge any Palestinian American who's voting third party. Um, what I will say is I do not understand why any Arab American or Palestinian American would support Donald Trump, because he will make everything so much worse. Um, and I remember the Muslim ban. Remember that? That was the first thing he did when he was in office. So again, I am not um directly affected by it. I want what I will say is we need to do better. We need to do much, much, much better. Rick, thank you again. That was deeply kind of you. Okay. Sorry, so the font's really small for some reason, but Marina 007, what is going to be my snack on vodka? Nah, just kidding. Totally kidding. That'll happen after the results come in. My snack of I'm not really a snacker. However, it's going to be a very, very, very long night and day. Like, we're probably gonna be working, we'll be working until networks say it's called, or say, we're not gonna know for a while, and then we're probably gonna have to be on call to be ready to start the next morning. So if anybody has snack ideas, you know what? Let's get like a list going. I'm a vegetarian and I'm not really a sweets person. So I don't know. Like I don't eat junk, but I kind of feel like maybe I should allow myself to do that on this election night. I don't think I've had them in 20 years, but maybe I'll get me some Cool Ranch Doritos because that's healthy. If anybody has any good ideas, let me know. And I think we should be planning ahead. Cool Ranch Doritos and lots of cans of Perrier, which I'm like currently addicted to. I mean, I guess if you're going to be addicted to something, may as well be water. Right, Lori, great question. Thank you for asking. And also thank you to you and all of our absolutely phenomenal moderators. You guys rock. Can I tell you about the election night's plans? Yes, I can. We are going to be on all of the, not all of the nerds, but as many nerds as we can gather will be here. We haven't decided exactly when, but certainly 6 o'clock at the latest we'll be starting, and each of us is going to be looking at a different source for information. Some people are going to be looking at the polling averages, some people are going to be looking at networks, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, I won't be doing that, but everybody else will. We're going to have people on the ground in swing states letting us know what's happening at polling stations and maybe getting us some exit polling information. We are going to have a map keeping track of all of the races that have been called. You know, obviously, we'll be looking at everything. We'll be looking at congressional races and Senate races and gubernatorial races. So yeah, it's going to be, you know, it's our first time doing something this big, but we're planning for it, and we're excited and terrified about it. I mean, I'm very excited about doing it. I'm terrified of the election, and I don't mean that like terrified we're going to lose. I just like the stress. You guys know, like even if I knew, even if Kamala Harris were 10 points ahead, I'd still be terrified. So just don't ignore me. But yeah, be here, and obviously we will keep you posted. And I'm not sure if this is going to happen yet, but we're not going to have. We're probably not going to have the nerds on Tuesday, but we might have a special edition nerds where each nerd has his or her final assessment, you know. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And we obviously are going to keep all of you posted as we get closer, because 9 days, we are in the single digits. I- that made me, that dehydrated me when I realized that. All right. I have to tell you guys, I am deeply appreciative of the mix of question types tonight, because I don't know if you'll recall, but about 40 minutes ago, I felt like I was at the bottom of a very deep well. In fact, I felt like I was at Earth's molten core. So Julia, how old are my cats? I love animals. Me too. Grew up with a pup, but love cats too. Yeah, I wish you weren't allergic to cats too. But guess who is? I'm actually, when I was a kid, I was like very, very allergic to cats, which was bad because I had allergy-induced asthma. Not a great combination. However, as I've learned, I'm not allergic to my cats. Like when I first get them, I am, but then I through exposure. So I'm only allergic to other people's cats. So Lyndon is 14 now. Jesus, how's that possible? And Cap is 3. Wow, yeah, it'll be in December, it'll be 3 years since I've had Cap. And my daughter gave her to me for Christmas. She was 4 months old and had ringworm, which she shared with me, which was very sweet. So yeah, pets are the best. I'm a cat person. Partially because like living in the city, and also when you have cats first, like they are the most low maintenance pets that you other than goldfish, possibly. Like my leopard gecko takes more maintenance because I have a beetle farm and have to hand feed her worms. Cats are just like so self-sufficient. They also have the best attitude, right? They just do. I wish they would visit more though. It's always fun when they do that when I record in the living room. They're much more hanging out in the background. Susan, donate to tight Senate races. We need the Senate. Yes, absolutely. Also, for those of you who don't know, I have a political action committee called the Democracy Defense Fund. Please go to that website and donate through our website. We have endorsed all of the Democratic candidates for Senate and Congress. It's an incredible group of people, especially, I mean, the Senate's like, again, it's all very important. We need to win everything, but the Senate is much more at risk right now. So please check out the Democracy Defense Fund. If somebody could put the link in the chat, that would be incredible. So thank you, Susan, for asking. Raymond, what did I think about Donald's McDonald's cosplay? That's not the cool kind. No, they just dressed him up in this ridiculous apron where he like nobody else at McDonald's dresses like that. So I like how that even qualifies as dressing like a McDonald's employee. I don't know. I found it deeply insulting. For many reasons, but just, again, that he was questioning a black person's origin story, demanding Barack Obama's birth certificate, demanding the employment records of Kamala Harris from 40 years ago, when this racist scumbag won't even release his medical records or his tax returns. I'm so heartily sick of it. Also, it just felt to me like a mockery. I've never worked at McDonald's, but I've had similar jobs that were part-time. It's really hard work, and, excuse me, but fuck him for going in there and, playing pretend for 15 minutes and making himself think like he's actually done an honest minute's work in his entirely useless life. So that's sort of what I think. Sorry, it makes me angry because, well, everything about him makes me angry at this point. Jasmine, do I have another book coming? Oh, wow. Give me a minute. But actually, yes, I do. I'm working on a novel. I've been working on it for a while, but I had to put it on hold to write my memoir. But my memoir just came out a couple of months ago. It's still available. If it will explain to you how I got to be how I am, if that's of interest. But also like the damage that gets done generationally, and when you grow up in a family that's of which the patriarch is a sociopath, and the damage that does the other generations, and then when one of those people gets the kind of power Donald has, like how it affects all of us in similar ways. So you can check out, what's it called? Who Could Ever Love You? Also my first book kind of helps clarify a lot of how we got here. But my hope is that, when the election is over, I'll be able to take a bit of time. I mean, I'm not taking time off because what does that even mean? But that I can shift gears a little bit and make a little bit of time to write a novel, because that's actually what I always wanted to do. I always wanted to be a novelist. And now I've written 3 books and all of them are nonfiction. So, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. Let's make it happen. Let's make sure I don't have to do it in exile somewhere. Justin, will America ever become a true democracy? Well, you know what? Not if Kamala Harris doesn't win. I think we will have lost our chance. However, I think if we do get Kamala Harris into the White House, we have the best chance we've ever had to make this country a true democracy. For many, many reasons. One, because of representation. One, although, we really screwed that up by not getting Hillary Clinton into the White House. But, with Kamala Harris, I think we have a shot at another 8 years at least of a Democrat in the White House. We'll get past a lot of this. I think we're more prepared than I think at 2020, a lot of people just thought, oh, thank goodness Biden won. We're fine. We were so far from being fine. And we know that because there's a Hitler rally right there, like a mile from where I am sitting right now. Where I take the train, there's a Hitler rally being led by the Republican candidate for the presidency. So we are much worse off than we were in many, many ways in 2020. And what's kind of amazing is that it's still neck and neck, even though the economy is much better. And I don't know, like 5,000 people a day aren't dropping dead from COVID. So America. But one of the other things that's very important is that Kamala Harris gets in. I'm hoping that independent media will really come into its own, which means the support of amazing people like you, And we can pivot to holding Dems accountable, which I spoke about earlier. Like that's because Democrats have to understand how much work this country needs to do. And that we have to acknowledge we've never been a true democracy. Otherwise, we won't do the work. And I'm not trying to insult anybody. It's just true, you know? So let's make that happen. I have hope. I have a lot of hope for that. Nuclear Magenta. Mary, how do I feel about West 56th Street between 5th and Madison being permanent? It's absurd. I mean, it's just absurd. This guy should be like, you should be given no perks. You should be given no Secret Service agents. He should be given nothing. He should be in prison, actually. So yeah, it infuriates me because we pay those costs. All right. From M. Am I worried that Donald's MAGA losers will cause violence? Yeah, totally. We're totally worried about that. Okay, listen, it's very important. I've said this before, and I was on Twitter briefly earlier, and AG from the Daily Beans and Mueller, she wrote, also tweeted this. This rally, look, it's New York City, and we hate him. We absolutely hate him. He's not getting any votes here. It's not happening. He's not here for that. He is here to get his base at a fever pitch. When he says things like, if I win, it was rigged, or he answered the question, will you accept the results of the election? And he says, well, if it's fair, by which he means if I win, yeah, sure. If Harris wins, then obviously it was stolen from me. That's what he did in 2020. He did that. He did a version of that in 2016 with the fucking popular vote because he's such a thin-skinned, narcissistic moron. Remember, he claimed that millions of immigrants voted. That's the only reason he lost the popular vote by 3 million votes, even though because we are not a fucking democracy, it didn't matter that he lost the popular vote. So this is what he does. Like he softens the ground, right? He prepares his people to believe that if he loses, it was because we stole it. We cheated. We're evil. We're bad. We're sick. So yeah, I'm really worried about it, honestly. However, and we got to keep remembering this, reminding ourselves of this and telling other people this. President Biden will still be president. He will be in charge of everything. So, like, what's Donald going to do? I'm not saying that's not a reason to be worried. I'm saying that we have to worry about a different kind of violence, more of the stochastic terrorism that Donald likes to engage in. We don't have to worry to the same degree about like mass events like January 6th it's highly unlikely because President Biden will be on top of it. President Biden will make sure the National Guard is on call, et cetera, et cetera. See what I'm saying? So yeah, we should be worried because that's what Donald wants. I just want to say, I've been meaning to say this for a while and I keep forgetting. Do you know how Donald has been saying recently that January 6th was a day of love? That in and of itself should be disqualifying, but because the Republican Party has completely capitulated to this fascist and itself become a fascist party, they don't care anymore that they all also almost got murdered on January 6th. It was a day of love. This is what Donald means. It was a day of love for him. The people on January 6th who were committing the violence against our members of Congress, against their staffers, against the people who work in the Capitol, and against the Capitol Police, they were doing it because they love Donald. And that is all he cares about. Also, by the way, he doesn't know what love means because one, he was never loved. And two, my grandfather, the sociopath, made Donald completely unlovable, which is a large part of the reason We are in this mess. Kevin, has Donald ever read anything? Articles about himself? I worked for him. He hired me to write one of his books. I don't remember which one. It was in the early 90s and didn't last very long. Because like he would never sit down for an interview with me. Like I think he just expected me to make it all up. So essentially every day I'd go into his office expecting that we'd have an interview, and instead he would just show me all of the articles that his assistant had clipped out of every single paper and publication across the world that mentioned him. And then sometimes, like if somebody said something unflattering or somebody said something really nice, in his stupid Sharpie, he would write a comment and run it by me and then have his secretary mail it back to the person who wrote the article. Like that's how Donald spent his days at the Trump organization, and I am not kidding. So, no, he doesn't read. I mean, he may well have had Hitler's speeches next to his bed. That doesn't mean he read them. He did not. Okay. From L, do I have any favorite poets? Oh, yes. Yes, indeed, I do. It's hard for me to put things like that in like an order of favorites, but Robert Browning, Alfred Lord Tennyson, Marianne Moore, wow. Shelley, Byron more than Shelley, George Gordon, Lord Byron. Yeah, like older stuff. I studied mostly Victorian lit when I was in college, but a lot of 18th century stuff as well. So older stuff mostly. So for more contemporary poets, Robert Lowell, I said Marianne Moore already. Elizabeth Bishop. Sorry, I'm boring you all now. Can nerd out about that some other time after we've saved our democracy. But thank you for the question. Now I want to go read poetry. Oh, by the way, speaking of which, there's this thing called Poem a Day. So every day they email you a poem. Strongly recommend. Strongly recommend that you subscribe. It's amazing. Sherry, basically of saying what the fuck is his drunk ass there. I also posted that if he's wearing a watch, the court needs. Okay, obviously we're talking about, yes, Rudy Giuliani was let out of his dungeon and was speaking like a maniac at this rally. I mean, who paid his cab fare? Like he shouldn't have a penny in his pocket. So yeah, I hope somebody was like keeping track of what kind of swag he had on, because forward that right over to Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. Well caught. Tiger Shark Studios. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Do I think Donald could have been saved if his parents? Yeah, I don't know. I think he would have needed different parents. My grandfather was a sociopath. Like there was no fixing him. And I think my grandmother was also broken beyond repair, in part because she ended up with my grandfather. So sadly, I don't think any of my grandparents' children could have been saved. And like the only thing that would have saved my dad is if he had enough self-confidence. Given the fact that he was a professional pilot at the height of the jet age, if he had the self-confidence to continue flying and just go on his own way. But I don't think any of this is the way I put it. Every single one of my grandparents' 5 children was a destroyed human being. Unfortunately, one of them is still alive and still in a position of extraordinary power in American politics. So we need to do something about that, don't we? Let's make sure in the next 9 days that everybody hears about what happened in my home today. It was and I didn't watch it. I saw clips here and there. I couldn't. I It was absolutely heartbreaking. So I'm sadly going to have to watch it. Um, Everybody needs to know just the depths of the depravity of these people. They value nothing. They care for no one, and they will, if we're stupid or ignorant or lazy enough to give it to them, they will harm us to a degree I don't think most people are even imagining could happen. So we know that. So let's just like spread the word and make sure that this doesn't get memory hold or sane washed or any of the other horrific things that the corporate media have been doing. Like, if this isn't enough, for example, for the Washington Post to endorse Kamala Harris, I don't know what to say anymore, right? Um, so we know what our job is. We know we've got as of tomorrow 8 days. We're going to This is a sprint. We are going to work until we cross that finish line, because we know that if there's one thing we didn't do and we lose, it's going to be very, very tough to live with that. So let's not let that happen. So first of all, thank you for accommodating my sadness when I started the show tonight, and thank you also for helping lift me out of it. You guys are amazing, and as I've said many times, but it needs to be said, we wouldn't be doing this without you. We couldn't be doing this without you. Again, thank you to our amazing moderators, and thank you especially to Mercedes. Also, without him, this would not happen. Like, I could barely tie my shoes today, let alone run a show. So thank you, Mercedes. All right, that is it for us. Amazing group. Thanks for everybody for the tips. So appreciated. Our team appreciates all of you. I will see you. We'll have some videos up tomorrow. We'll see you live with the Nerds Tuesday at 12 Eastern. In the meantime, you know the drill. Please stay safe, be kind, and take care of yourselves. Good night, everybody.